Great, thanks so much. So it's the dreaded post-lunch spot, right? So I get it. I'll see what I can do to try and breathe some life into this post-lunch spot. So thanks to Adam for putting on an incredible conference. Really excited to be here. I moved up here in '93, and it's just inspiring to see how this community has grown and developed and changed in the time that I've been here. So it's exciting to see everybody here, local and not local. So in the date's right, 1988, I walk into a somewhat seedy video rental store in Syracuse, New York. And I'm a little embarrassed to say what I was asking for. I get up the courage, I roam around the store a little bit, and I finally go up to the guy behind the counter and I say, look, I'm gonna ask for something and I'm really embarrassed to ask you for it. He's like, whatever, what do you want? You wanna go behind the curtain? It's fine, don't worry about it. I said, no, it's not that, it's not that, it's something else. I said, do you have any VHS tapes on how to program a computer? And he's like, no, of course not. You gotta go to school for that. And I go, great. What had happened earlier in that day, I had just started a master's program at Syracuse University in journalism, and I walked in and I saw not Bill Bixby, but a computer. And back then, to use a computer, even some basic word processing and layout, you needed to have some sense of basic programming, and I didn't have that. Everyone in the class did. Very embarrassing. I chose not to raise my hand. The point of all of this is I am not technically sophisticated. Right? So we're not going to talk about anything technical today, at least I'm not. If you want to ask me technical questions, there's a lot of smart people in the room who can answer it. I'm not here to talk about that. What I'm going to talk about and share a little bit is some things that I've learned over my career as a creative director. And there's a couple of things that I've learned that I think we all can benefit from. In fact, they're lessons that I have to relearn every day. So it's been my experience as a creative director, probably three things. Keeps it easy to remember, right? Three things that a good creative director does. They help their teams conceive good ideas, they help their teams sell those in, and they help their teams make them. That's about it. It took me a long time to get it boiled down to those three. What's interesting about the order of this is you can't go from conceive to make without the sell, unless you're self-funded or it's your own project, right? If you want someone to pay you to do the thing that you think is right, that's the toll booth. You gotta go through. We all know that. We can conceive something, and we're really good at making it. But we gotta get somebody to say yes and to pay for it, right? So it's a crucial step. And for many of us, we don't spend time, nor have we been trained on that step. We spend a lot of time on technology and understanding user patterns and interface and app development and what's happening around colors and technology and platforms. We don't spend a lot of time on that, but the whole thing falls apart if we can't sell it. Because then we can't make it. And then we can't put it in the world, and we can't prove to everyone how friggin' smart we are that this thing is gonna rock, right? So it's so crucial. So that's what I want to talk with you about today there's a critical distinction that we have to make when it comes to selling. Now, we present our work oftentimes internally, right, to our colleagues or our bosses or to a client. Presenting is very different than selling, right? So presenting is sharing. Kind of an update, here's where we're at, looking for some feedback, some insight, some direction. That's presenting. We do that a lot. That's not selling. What often happens, though, is when we present a lot, that becomes our de facto habit. We just lay the stuff out. We just turn the computer on and toggle through, because that's what we've been doing. But in the moment of selling, we can't be presenting. In the moment of selling, we have to be selling. So think about the difference. Presenting is, here's where I'm at, give me some feedback, let me know what you think, it's all good, right? Where does that lead us? Right? It doesn't get us to an endpoint, which we need on the sell. On the sell, we need a decision to move forward, right? So it's important to understand the difference. Presenting is not selling, and a lot of us do a lot of presenting. And we're thrown into a sales situation, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's not what you think. We default to presenting. They're not the same thing. So selling, right, dirty word, we know that. We think it's seedy, like that video store I was telling you about in Syracuse. it's not Alec Baldwin and Glengarry Glen Ross, right? It's not second prize is a set of steak knives, third prize is you're fired. That's not selling, right? That's hucksterism, that's cajoling, that's convincing someone of something that they wouldn't naturally do. Yeah, that stuff's dirty, and that's not selling. Selling is really about moving. It's about persuading people. I read a recent study, it was super interesting. They broke down how we spend our work days these days, and what they found out was we, in the business world, spend 40% of our day persuading people in sales situations that don't involve money. 40% of our day. We break this down, think about it. Think about how many times we post on social media. We're trying to persuade someone to think or feel or act. That's a moment of movement. We're very thoughtful about what we post, the words we share, right? Think about all the things we do every day. We're actually doing this all the time. We're not selling. We're not asking someone to take out their wallet and buy something from us, but we want them to move to a place where we're at. Right? So selling is not about getting someone to do something they wouldn't normally do. It's moving them to a place that they probably would go anyway, and our job is to get them there. Right? So it's been my experience, I kind of step back and reflect over years and years and years, and a lot of failed presentations and a few successful ones. There's only two flavors of presenting and selling. That's it. They pretty much fall into two categories when it comes to presenting our ideas, whether it's internally or externally. There's the slow build and the big reveal. That's it. There's only two ways to go. So there's different versions and types of that, but that really boils down to that. Now, the slow build is the path we all want. We want that path. The slow build has a 6 to 10 times higher degree chance of success than the big reveal. If you can take a colleague, a boss, or a client on an incremental journey with your work, you will get them to yes 6 to 10 times better than you would with the big reveal. It's proven. So just think about that. There's a better way to make sure that you can cross over, right, from conceive to make. It's proven. There's a way to do it. We talked about it earlier. We just don't think about it a lot, and we don't practice it enough. But a little bit can go a long way to getting us to the place we all want to be, which is we want to make that thing, put it out in the world, and prove that it's really going to make a difference. It's all about incremental movement. It's the opposite of the big reveal. We'll talk about both. The big reveal is Texas Hold'em, cards over, step back from the table. What do you say, right? That's the big reveal. The slow build is not that. It's steps, conscious, intentional, strategic steps that you take to get them to where you want them to go. If you deconstruct, which we will in a second, the steps and the principles, interestingly, or maybe not that interestingly, the same things that everyone in this room does every day when it comes to conceiving and thinking about new ideas and user experience, exactly the same things you need to do when it comes to presenting and selling your work. This is nothing new. Think about it, right? If you're tasked with a project and you really need to dig inside the life of a user, what do? Go inside, right? You understand what motivates him or her. You have to come up with a good idea. The same principles apply to presenting and selling. It's exactly the same thing you do in your day-to-day life. All we need to do is identify the principles and port them over into that situation. Because we all have the skills to do it, because we do it every day, because we're successful at what we do. So let's walk through. I think I boiled it down to probably 3 key components when it comes to the slow build. I mentioned this at the beginning. I really want to dig into this because it's number one for a reason, because it's the most important thing. When we're in that situation with a coworker, a creative director boss, a head of IT, or a client, the most important thing, if you walked out of here with nothing else, I'd want you to walk away with this idea. It's not about you. It is not about you. And man, it feels like it's about you. When you've sweated over a project and you feel like you've nailed it, you've connected every dot and done the research, and you slide that in or flip the screen up, man, you feel like it's about you. It should be about you, right? But in that moment, it's not about you. If you want them to say yes and approve the funding to go make it, you got to turn that whole thing around. You now have to take your work, your expertise, your thinking, and you got to put it into their world. It's about how they show up, what's important to them. Right? We're all selfishly driven human beings. That's how we operate. So our job is to translate the work in the moment to our audience and make it work for him or her. That's our job. So it no longer becomes about us, it becomes about them and understanding them. What's really important is to understand the real audience. Now, these scenarios just happen every minute of every day for all of us, right? We present to a small group inside our company. And we know, because we've been there for a matter of minutes, we know who the real decision maker is in the company, right? We present to a client, and we know there's probably one key person in every client interaction who drives the decision. We know that. We learn that really quickly when we talk to a client, when we meet the client. If we're listening and paying attention, those cues and clues are very apparent. Well, think about that. You walk into a meeting with a client, there's 6 people, and you're going to show them your idea. You can't present to 6 people successfully. There's too many personalities in the mix. Everyone's walking into that meeting with different motivation, different DNA. So what you need to do is identify who's the key decision maker in advance, and we know this, right? If we're paying attention, subtle clues and cues are asked somebody. It's really easy to find out. Identify who the key decision maker is, and then tailor the presentation to meet the needs of that person. That's it. That's what you do. Identify who it is, and then tailor the presentation for that person. Now, that person is going to experience that presentation in a way that will feel very personal to him or her. And no one will know except you, because it'll just feel like a presentation. But that person who's deciding is going to feel like you are speaking to him or her. Like, whoa, that was kind of on the same wavelength there. You know, I like this guy, right? It's so much so that it dictates everything we do. So let's break this down a little bit. And there's lots of different psychological models that are out there. There's Myers-Briggs, and you name it. There's constructs that name personality types by animals, birds, everything, right? We've seen them. They're all pretty much the same thing. Personality types get boiled down into 4 categories usually, and you just use different names and pictures to label them. But there's pretty much 4 drivers of human beings. So follow the example, right? You go into a meeting, you've identified that there's this one woman who's really going to drive the decision. What do I know about her? What do I know about her? Oh, she's the CFO. And I met with her once before, and I heard some stories about her. She's very cautious. She's very risk-averse, and she's very much focused on the numbers. That's how she walks through the world. Those are the things that are important to her. So if we're going to present, and we know she's the key decision maker, and we know a little bit about her, would we talk about pie in the sky, moonshot ideas? Talk about the incredible rewards and the big risks and the massive failures we might take together? Let's hold hands and jump, right? No, we wouldn't do that, right? We would present in a way that works for her. Well, we've done considerable user testing. In fact, I want to walk you through those highlights right now. And after this meeting, I'm going to follow up with a deck that goes into tremendous detail about the user testing. And in fact, we've done a comprehensive competitive analysis to find out where we sit, where no one else sits. I'd like to walk you through the details of that competitive analysis right now. We've baked in unprecedented tracking and analytics into this project as well, because that's crucial to the success of the project. We're going to lead with all of that. And you could do the exact same presentation to someone who walks through the world very differently. It would be the same work, but we would translate it differently for a different person. The work never changes. Again, not about us, it's about them. Identify the decision maker, understand their motivations, and craft it for them. Make it work for them. Now, in that moment of presenting and sharing, it gets dicey. We know that. We've been in those rooms. It gets really dicey, right? The whole thing sometimes hangs in the balance. Teams work 6 months. We pushed off this meeting 3 times. Whole thing's got to work, right? Got a lot of people praying for us. So it gets a little dicey in that moment. So in advance of those meetings and those steps in the process, think about the things that are available to you that you can use. Trust is nothing more important than trust, but think about the setting. Typically, we're presenting to our clients who either run businesses or organizations, right? So they have business imperatives, organizational needs that they're trying to accomplish, and they've hired us as an outside agency or an in-house firm to help them do that. And that's the stuff they go back to their office with, right? That's their day-to-day life. Sales, retention, growing, donorship, you name it, right? So the way we earn trust typically in a meeting like that is we gotta be able to speak that language a little bit. It's not just about the color. It's not just about the development platform that we're gonna be exploring potentially. You have to put it into a business context because that's a surefire way to earn trust. Empathy, right? Overused word, but so important in that moment. That person goes back to their office and they feel like they're inundated with requests, meeting their numbers, way too many meetings. Let them know that you feel their pain in that moment. Say, look, I know we had an hour and a half scheduled. Let's cut it to an hour so you can get back to what you need to do. You can make that conscious strategic decision before you go into the meeting and it's planned out, but man, when you say that in the moment, it feels like a gift. It just feels like a gift, right? It felt like that person says, oh my God, thank God. Thank you. I needed that half an hour. Thank you very much, right? It also helps build trust. It's a moment of empathy and it helps build trust. Well, what are you prepared to give up in advance? Have you thought about what part of your idea that you would be prepared to compromise on? The worst thing to do is you get in that moment and somebody says, well, have you thought about a different color? Have you thought about a different complementary color? Right? Have you thought, right? And in that moment, you're nervous sometimes. You're like, oh, I'm digging in my heels on the blue. I'm just, screw you. It's all blue. We talked about it. All right, it's blue or nothing. Screw the world, right? If you think about it in advance and go, okay, well, if we identify the key parts of our project and we prioritize them, where does the color fit into that hierarchy? If it's number one, then don't compromise. If it's number 3 or number 5, okay, I might give a little on blue. Maybe it's the shade of blue. Maybe it's how we use blue. But be prepared to know what you're prepared to compromise on in advance. Otherwise, you're going to be caught flat-footed in that moment. You really can't answer it well. And the natural human reaction to that is to fight and to dig in. And that never goes well. It really doesn't. We know that, right? And the last is gifts. Sometimes in that critical moment where they're right there, right? They're about to sign off, and they just need one little push. And they've mentioned something throughout the entire project or presentation that just has hung them up. And you've been paying attention to those conversations. And you feel like they're right there. Just gift them that. Right? Gift them that. Give them that piece. If you feel like the project can work without that piece, just give it to them. Think about it in advance, talk to your team, have a plan B, but just give it to them. I guarantee if you give a client a little piece that's been hanging them up for a long time and they bring it up every time and you don't change it, if you give them that in that moment, it will turn them. Right there, they'll say, oh, okay, we can live with that. But you've thought about it in advance. You knew what you were prepared to give up, right? When that happens, those steps, this is really where it gets great, and it gets easier for us. It takes the pressure off, right? We talked about it's our idea, our team's been working on it, we have all the power, we're gonna turn it over, right, and share it. We hold the power. When we can give up the power and the ownership to our client or our colleagues, that's where it gets interesting, right? What's more powerful in human beings is shared ownership and shared belief. I can be strong on my own. I can dig my heels in. I can fight for my idea, right? One person can do a lot. But when 2 people believe in the same thing, right, that's really powerful. So that's the goal of the slow build, is to get people on an incremental path to shared ownership. Because when that happens, then they'll take it. They'll take it from there. You might not even get invited to the board meeting, which is a tremendous compliment, because who the hell wants to do that, right? they'll take it and run with it because now it's theirs. They own it. There was some compromise, trust was built, empathy was established. They own it. It felt like it was tailored to them. They're going home and telling their partners about it. You should see the stuff I did. I mean, that so-and-so did, right? They're so proud of it because it's theirs. And you just got them there. They're going to love it anyway, right? You just want to increase your chances of them loving it and saying yes. Now, all that being said, and we've been thrown into this situation many times, right? That big reveal moment, that big presentation we have to do internally, externally, that happens. And sometimes it needs to happen. And those presentations and meetings can be really challenging, right? Those are not fun for some of us to walk into and be like, oh, God, no, someone else go there, do that, please, right? You can do it in person, it can happen online, but again, like I said, it's that kind of Texas Hold'em moment, right? All hinging on this one big reveal. So the chances of success are not as great as the slow build, but there's a couple of things you can do in preparation and during that can definitely increase your chances of success. So when we boil it down, it feels like there's 4 things we could do. We talked about trust, right? So there's some commonality between the slow build and the big reveal. And one is trust. So think about it, right? If we're presenting, what are they buying? Are they buying the project, the product, the thinking? Of course they are. But they have to trust us as people that we can deliver it. So we're selling trust in us, right? And how do you gain trust quickly? That's hard to do, right? But people, by nature, are trusting. It's true. One quick way to do that is to share something about yourself at the very beginning. Like I did today, a little story about my life, right? What that does is it opens up the room. And people get a little peek inside you and go, oh, this seems like a real person. I'm more trusting of real people, right? Make it short, relevant, right? Of course, don't go off on some crazy story about your trip with the in-laws to Lake Michigan, right? But find a personal story and share it at the beginning of the meeting. There's no better icebreaker than a quick personal story. It warms you up, but more importantly, it starts to build trust because now you're a real person. I'm a real person. I might be more open to listen to what a real person has to say, right? The next thing we do is quickly assess the audience, just like we learned before. In that moment, that boardroom, or even at a conference table in your office, you know who the decision maker is, and you probably know what drives her or him. Tailor that pitch right for them. Just go right at them. You know what motivates them. You know what they're all about. Just say it. Just craft the presentation perfectly tailored for her or him, and you'll dramatically increase your chances of success. Earning the trust of the decision maker is crucial. We talked about this before. Same methods apply, right? Can you speak credibly about business? How does your solution solve a business problem? And are you prepared to answer hard questions in the moment about that? And that's work you can do in advance, right? And that's work that we can do with our teams, right? By writing better briefs, asking more business-focused questions, challenging our coworkers around those topics, making those front and center for our entire organization so we're all more business literate. So that then we get in that moment of selling and decision-making, when someone at the table raises their hand and asks you a question about how this will impact their business, it's not deer in the headlights. Thought about it, talked about it. Maybe you don't have the perfect answer, but at least you can have a meaningful dialogue in the moment about real critical business issues that your project will help solve. And the last part about this is oftentimes the most challenging, right? Is let's assume the big reveal, you did a great job. Told the story, a little bit of trust, right? You identified, did all those things, right? And you come to the end. How do you end one of those presentations? What do you say? What are the words? Have we practiced those words before? My point earlier, we don't practice this stuff a lot, but we don't get to make the things we want to make unless we can get the client to say yes. We just don't. We don't get permission. And it's more powerful if that comes from the person who is making it. right? Not from an account executive or someone else. If the person in the team that we're making it, if they can make the request, it's very powerful. Now, typically, what some of us do is we'll present, and we'll default back into that presentation mode at the end. Walk through it, it all seemed to make sense, and we'll say something like, so, what do you think? Any feedback? Could there be a wider question to ask? I mean, you have opened all barn doors and invited anything into that, right? Right? Any feedback? Right? That is just way too open-ended. If you believe in your work, you've done the necessary homework and crafted a presentation that will get them to where you want them, and you believe in your work, you assume you are presenting the right solution, right? There's no gray area in that. So go for what's called the assumptive close. If you've done your homework and you've presented a solid idea, it's done, right? The selling has already happened, right? So don't ask for questions or feedback, move on. What I'd like to do next is talk about the next 2 weeks. I want to walk you through the budget implications, and I want to show you some examples of what you're going to see in about a month from today. Any objections to that? If someone objects, they'll raise their hand. They'll say, could you go back to slide 3, and I'm going to talk, great, we'll go back to slide 3, not a problem. Go back to slide 3, answer their question, and then close it again. So, like I said earlier, I want to talk about the schedule, the budget implications, and where we're going to be in about a month. Any objections to that? We good? Close them again. Close the loop, but do it from a place of confidence, because you wouldn't be there if you didn't believe in the work, right? And they'll feel that. They'll feel that. You believe in the work. You just poured your heart and soul into it. You presented it in a compelling, honest, trustworthy way. Let's move on, right? Another way to tie that bow on this, which we've all done, and the times we don't do it, it bites us in the ass. It's just a great reminder, and it just happened to us the other day. Get through it all. Ask for any objections in the room. Nope, we're good. Great, the meeting's over. And you don't follow up with the meeting notes. Meeting notes. What happened in the meeting, and what was agreed to? Well, at the end of the meeting, we asked for any objections, and no one raised their hand. That's approval. That's called an approval. You capture that in meeting notes and say, we shared 3 ideas, you guys picked B, we answered a few questions, there were no objections to us moving forward, our next steps are schedule, budget implications, and wireframes in 4 to 6 weeks. That's captured in meeting notes. And it's not gotcha, like you don't want to prove the client wrong. It's just documenting what was agreed to. So a week later, and the client's like, wait, we didn't. Yes, we did. We did. We agreed to that. But if you're having second thoughts, that's fine too. But agreement happened. We happened in the room and we followed up. If you want to revisit, that's fine. And we can start a new project. We can rescope. We can re-estimate. We can absolutely do that. Not a problem. We'll have that conversation. Let's set up a time to do that. But we have approval, and we're moving forward. Right? So it's a simple tip. We relearn it all the time. If you can get approval in the moment, right in the room, don't forget to just capture it in a quick follow-up. It's really important and crucial. So that is kind of what I've learned over 25 plus years as creative director when it comes to selling and having to get clients to kind of hop over and give us permission to go make things. And I'm happy to answer any questions or chat about anything related to that. Thanks.